Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Analyzing Evil. Today we turn our attention to one of anime's coldest, most terrifying, yet strangely captivating villains, Esdeth from Akame ga Kill, a woman whose power and presence dominate every battlefield she steps on, and whose twisted worldview shapes the bloody course of an entire empire. Esdeth was born into a remote, frozen region of the empire, home to a clan of hardened hunters. Life there wasn't just difficult, it was brutal. Resources were scarce, predators were relentless, and winters seemed endless. Her clan had a philosophy that mirrored the reality: only the strong survive. Compassion was seen as weakness, and weakness meant death. Her father, the clan leader, was the most pivotal figure in shaping her mindset. He wasn't a gentle, nurturing parent. Instead, he was a ruthless teacher, drilling into her philosophy that would define her entire life. Esdeth's ideology didn't come from nowhere. It was ingrained in her from childhood. In the icy tundra of the northern frontier, she was born into the tribe of fierce hunters, a people who believe in survival above all else. Tragedy struck when danger came in a form of monstrous beasts that slaughtered her people, leaving young Esdeth alone. This wasn't just an abstract belief of Esdeth, it was demonstrated daily. Her father would take her on hunts where they tracked and killed dangerous creatures. He encouraged her to enjoy the hunt, to revel in the struggle, to feel excitement in crushing anything weaker than her. The defining moment of Esdeth's childhood came when a powerful danger beast, a monstrous predator in the Akame ga Kill universe, attacked her clan and wiped out nearly everyone, including her parents. What did Esdeth do? She didn't collapse into grief. She didn't retreat. She internalized the slaughter as proof of her father's words. Her takeaway wasn't just "this is unfair." It was "only the strong survive. I must become the strongest." This trauma didn't break her, it solidified her ideology in her young mind. There was no place for injustice or kindness. Those concepts were luxuries for people who didn't live in her brutal reality. Her father's mantra became her religion. Survival of the fittest wasn't just nature, it was truth, morality, and destiny. Any signs of empathy or mercy was squashed in her formative years. Her father didn't see them as virtuous, but as dangerous weaknesses. Losing her entire family didn't make her crave connection. It made her afraid of weakness in herself or anyone she relied on. Thus, her Darwinism wasn't a philosophy she picked up on as an adult. It was her core worldview, etched into her father and her environment. This explains why, even as a general, she would train her soldiers to embrace pain and reject pity, or why she found joy in torturing prisoners. She wasn't just being sadistic for entertainment, she genuinely saw suffering as a forge that creates strength. As she grew, Esdeth turned her childhood survival into a full-blown philosophy. A twisted form of social Darwinism taught her that cruelty wasn't just a tool, it was necessary. She didn't see herself as evil, she saw herself as honest. The world was cruel, so she would be crueler. The world was merciless, so she would lead by merciless example. This made her rise through the military ranks of the empire almost inevitable. Her talent in combat, cunning strategies, and total lack of moral hesitation caught the eye of the corrupt prime minister, Honest, the true puppet master behind the empire's throne. Under him, she became the empire's most feared general, leading armies, crushing rebellions, and painting the map with blood, all in the name of order and natural law. Prime Minister Honest was a man thrived on manipulation, corruption, and control. He was the real power behind the throne, turning the young emperor into nothing more than a figurehead, while he exploited the people and drained the empire for his gain. When Honest discovers Esdeth, he immediately recognizes her as a perfect instrument for his schemes, a blade with no conscience. Prime Minister Honest isn't just a side character, he is the corrupt beating heart of the empire, the spider at the center of the web who pulls every string. When the story begins, the emperor is only a child, far too young, naive, and inexperienced to govern. This vacuum of true leadership creates the perfect opening for Honest to step in, not as a mentor, but as a puppeteer. He whispers into the boy's ear, feeds him half-truths and outright lies, and presents himself as the trusted steward of the empire. Under his guidance, every decree the young emperor signs, every justice carried out in the empire's name is ultimately Honest's doing. What was once a benevolent empire under a previous ruler rots into a decaying, cruel state plagued by poverty, suffering, and corruption, all because Honest turns the government into his fiefdom. And then there's Esdeth, the perfect weapon for Honest's ambitions. She isn't politically manipulative like him, but she doesn't need to be. Her unquestionable strength, mastery of the Taigu demon's extract, and cold-blooded philosophy makes her the ideal enforcer for the Honest's will. Honest is cunning enough to recognize that Esdeth's loyalty isn't to him personally. Her loyalty is to the empire itself and her own belief in strength. So he ensures that her worldview aligns with his plans, feeding her campaigns, praising her justice, and letting her do what she does best, crushing resistance with brutal efficiency. Esdeth becomes the iron fist to Honest's poisoned tongue. One rules through blood, the other through manipulation. Their dynamic is fascinating because they need each other, but for entirely different reasons. Honest needs Esdeth because her reputation and unmatched might keep dissent in check. She commands the Jaegers, her elite unit, and her presence alone terrifies rebels. Esdeth, meanwhile, needs Honest not out of love or loyalty to him, but because he gives her the war's conflicts she craves. He provides her the resources, the authority, and the chaos she thrives on. Together they form a symbiotic tyranny. Honest corrupts the government from the top down, while Esdeth enforces that corruption on the battlefield. One manipulates a boy emperor like a marionette. The other ensures that anyone who would cut the strings is frozen or slaughtered. And in his grim partnership lies the question for the audience. Is Esdeth simply another one of Honest's pawns, or is she complicit, fully aware of her blade and her philosophy are cementing the rule of a man rotting the empire from inside out? Esdeth respected Honest only insofar as he provided her with the resources and authority. She wasn't loyal to him in the emotional sense. She was loyal to the idea of a strong empire where she could rule unchecked. On the battlefield, this made the partnership one of mutual exploitation. Honest needed her ruthlessness, and she needed his political power. But unlike many of Honest's pawns, Esdeth was never truly under his thumb. She was too independent, too dangerous, and ultimately beyond his control. Esdeth wasn't just a tactician, she was walking natural disaster. She wielded one of the most dangerous Taigu imperial arms ever created, the demon's extract, an artificial infused with the blood of an ice dragon beast. With it, she gained devastating ice powers, freezing entire armies, summoning massive ice spears, even creating frozen worlds that made escape impossible. This power wasn't just a weapon, it was part of her personality. It symbolized her coldness, her emotional control, and her ability to erase anything she saw as weak. But for all her cruelty, Esdeth had one contradiction: love. When she met Tatsumi, a young fighter from the revolutionary night raid, something unusual happened. She fell in love. When Esdeth meets Tatsumi, the young and idealistic fighter from Night Raid. It isn't love at first sight, it's fascination at first conquest. Tatsumi earns her attention during the Colosseum tournament, where she holds an event to scout strong warriors for her Jaegers. When Tatsumi emerges victorious, not only does he display the strength Esdeth values so highly, but he also demonstrates something even rarer: integrity. He fights with honor and refuses to kill needlessly, and that mixture of strength and morality cuts through Esdeth's cold worldview like a crack in ice. For perhaps the first time in her life, Esdeth feels vulnerable not on the battlefield, but in her heart. This is a woman who has spent her life crafting a philosophy around strength and dominance. Yet now she's confronted with an emotion she cannot control. Her attraction to Tatsumi turns into obsession, but in her mind, she interprets that obsession as love. From that moment, her approach to Tatsumi is not one of partnership, but of ownership. She doesn't ask for his affection. She assumes she can win it, bend his will, and integrate him into her worldview. In her mind, love is just another arena to conquer. When Tatsumi resists her advances, it confuses and frustrates her. Esdeth isn't used to anyone rejecting her. Rather than soften, she becomes increasingly possessive, wanting to keep him by her side at any cost, even if it means imprisoning him or forcing him to see her ideology. This shift is important because it shows a rare crack in her icy facade. Esdeth, the woman who views weakness as death sentence. This shift is important because it shows a rare crack in her icy facade. Esdeth, the woman who views weakness as a death sentence, finds herself making exceptions for Tatsumi. She spares his life more than once. She fantasizes about a life where they could be together, even if that life exists under her strict terms. And here's where the philosophical tension arises. Is Esdeth's love for Tatsumi evidence that there was something human buried deep inside her, a sign she wasn't entirely the cold monster she projected? Or is it simply another form of control and domination, with Tatsumi reduced to a prize she refuses to lose? Her love never leads to redemption, it never breaks her worldview. If anything, it reinforces it. She believes she deserves Tatsumi simply because she is strong enough to claim him. That warped, possessive love ultimately highlights her inability to truly understand connection, a failing that mirrors the collapse of her empire and ultimately leads her undoing. Esdeth's psychological makeup is fascinating. She was ruthless, but not chaotic. Everything she did, torture, execution, conquest, was deliberate. She genuinely believed her worldview was correct and saw herself as the leader shaping the world into a place where only the strong could thrive. Her soldiers feared her, but they also worshipped her because she rewarded strength and competence. To many, she was both idol and terror. But this strength had a cost. It left her blind to other ways of living. She dismissed empathy as weakness. She dismissed mercy as foolishness. And in doing so, she created the very rebellion that would destroy her. As the empire collapsed under the weight of its own corruption and resistance attacks, Esdeth stood as its last true defense. She battled the members of Night Raid, using every ounce of her power to hold on to her vision of the world. In the end, her final fight came against Akame, the legendary assassin. It was brutal, desperate, and symbolic of the Empire's coldest general against its deadliest rebel. Esdeth was defeated not just because Akame was skilled, but because her worldview failed her. Her belief that strength always wins blinded her to the reality that other forms of strength, like teamwork, love, and sacrifice, could overcome raw power. When she died, she chose to freeze herself and shatter into ice, leaving nothing behind. No redemption, no apology, just an unyielding end for an unyielding woman. Esdeth's belief in the strong live, the weak die isn't just a personal motto, it's the lens through which she views the entire world. Raised in a frozen wasteland where mercy could mean starvation, and hesitation could mean death. She internalized the idea that strength was the only currency that mattered. To her, kindness and compassion wasn't virtuous, they were liabilities that would only get someone crushed. This created a warped but internally consistent worldview. She didn't see her cruelty as evil, but as a form of honesty. In her mind, the world itself is cruel, nature is cruel, so why pretend otherwise? Her philosophy of Darwinism became a shield, justifying her actions and allowing her to see her rise in the empire as a natural order rather than ambition or tyranny. But the tragedy of this ideology is that it leaves no room for vulnerability, trust, or real connection. Even her love for Tatsumi is filtered through this belief that she doesn't desire an equal partner. She desires something strong enough to stand beside her, and if he refuses, she believes it's because he is weak. Esdeth's ideology reflects a mindset that many real-world tyrants and warlords have adopted throughout history, mistaking cruelty for strength and thinking domination is the same as survival, and yet it forces the audience to ask whether she was always destined to become this way. Or could someone who grew up under such brutal lessons have ever chosen another path? Esdeth is one of anime's most compelling villains because she's not just a monster, she's consistent. She lives, loves, and dies by the same philosophy: the strong survive. But here's the question for you. Was Esdeth truly evil, or was she simply the product of a cruel world that shaped her to be just as cruel? Is her philosophy of strength brutal honesty, or a dangerous excuse to hurt others? And what about her love for Tatsumi? Was it a glimpse of her humanity she buried deep inside, or just another form of control? Finally, was she using Prime Minister honest, or was he using her? And what does that say about a world where the corrupt feed the powerful, and the powerful enforce corruption? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Does Esdeth deserve to be remembered as a villain, or a tragic warning of what happens when pain turns ideology?